Welcome to the Elite Designer Podcast by the Whitespace Elite Circle, a community where creatives learn, earn, and network to stand out. This podcast delivers top-tier insights for designers and creatives looking to grow both in career and business. Join our host, Oluwafemi Akingbola, and a lineup of brilliant creative minds as they share real-world experiences, proven strategies, and powerful tips to thrive in this ever-evolving industry.
Hi creators, welcome back to the Elite Designer Podcast, and in today's episode we are going to be talking about something that you've heard before, you've heard me say before, and we divulge in the Design Refraction webinar. It is the Prism within. We're going to talk about diversification, and guess what? We're talking about diversification from the perspective of someone else from outside Africa. His name is Aindriü, the founder of Astrella Visuals, and is right from Amsterdam. The truth is, I was scrolling through TikTok the other day and I saw one of his videos and I'm like, yeah, this person needs to share his story because we need to hear this story. So diversification is important, and that is why he's here with us in the studio. Astrella, how have you been? How's been everything?
Thank you so much for the introduction, Femi, and for the kind words. I'm Aindriü Green, and I'm originally from England. I'm now based in Amsterdam, and I run my creative agency, Astrella, and I've worked with AAA brands. I have shot with those brands. I've written scripts. I'm a soon-to-be author, and I have an interesting story because I come from a place of poetry and sensitivity, and I've had to learn from a very young age how to tell stories and survive the modern world. So my story began when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and luckily my parents had a really good taste in films, so we had a very large library of DVDs from a young age, and I used to watch these Hollywood films. And I was exposed to cinema, and what that was for me was a window into other worlds. So I was fascinated with the concept of filmmaking beyond just actors, lighting, and camera. It was the idea of, as a creative, you can engineer stories and you can engineer worlds and touch people across the world so they can enjoy those stories and immerse themselves and get lost in those characters. So the concept of layering, structuring, and compounding in a three-dimensional space, I just fell in love with. So that kick-started my journey throughout my teenage years of exploring storytelling. And the problem I faced from a young age was I didn't have access to Hollywood cameras that cost £50,000 plus and expensive lenses, and you don't have actors in your hometown and etc. So I had to make use of my own resources. And a starting point for me was to write stories just through words. I began just with little short stories, attempting to write some books, and just creating these worlds so I could practice putting narratives together. And that very quickly spiraled into making those narratives visual, by buying my first camera, filming my friends in the local park, etc. So my story is a story of chasing and acting on my highest passion and not giving up in the face of danger.
Oh, wow. That is an interesting story. And I'm just going to pick 3 points from that story. The first is your curiosity. You just wanted to, document stuff. The second is telling a story. Everybody has a story to tell. Every creative has a story to tell. It just depends on how you tell it, and that's what forms your uniqueness. And of course, the third, and which is one of the most important, is start from where you are. He said, you mentioned the fact that you started with what you had, and you just kept on, pushing on and pressing. And this is The curiosity part is, what I can double down on, because that's what will lead us to diversification. Because if you are not curious, you won't be able to, access the other sources or other varieties or other ingredients that you have, that you possess, right? So curiosity is the key that leads to diversification. So yeah, I'm just going to go to the next question. And before I go to the next question, remember I said I stumbled on your post on TikTok where you were talking about diversification, and look at the fact that some of your people niched down and you listed the importance of diversification. So I want you to, in the same vein, list the importance of diversifying, not just, trying to niche down and facing one thing. You're diversifying to, solve a problem. Because one of the things I understand about diversification is that it helps you express yourself in different modes, and it, gives you more sources of income, more room to give people more value. So I just need you to tell us the pros and the cons, like the advantages and the disadvantages of diversification, of not niching down. But for me, I believe the pros are more than the cons. So up to you. What are the pros and the cons of diversification?
That's a brilliant segue into my experience of coming of age and exploring my curiosities, as you've clearly stated. The problem I faced when I first indulged into my passions was this famous graph that you may have seen online. When you first discover a passion, it spikes. Your curiosity is reaching a peak of excitement. Very quickly after, when you first come across your first obstacles in your industry, you go into the valley of disappointment and it completely tails off and it hits bedrock. And I'm sure you know this feeling too, Femi. Mm-hmm. And that's where the real challenge begins. Because if you're acting out of excitement and you're pursuing a curiosity, the valley of disappointment you can read as a sign of adversity, a sign from the universe to tell you to stop going down this path. What every creative needs to remember is it's actually a good sign, and the faster you hit that sign and get told that, you quickly can identify you're on the right path. So it's pushing through those obstacles. For example, in filmmaking, you get your first camera, you get your friends together, you begin filming, and then you realize the sound is terrible. The microphone's exploded, or there's wind down the microphone. You're listening to all your clips in the edit, and all the audio's gone. And you go, filmmaking's hard because I've recorded these beautiful visuals and there's no sound. The next thing is you go, okay, let's get a microphone. And we've got the camera, we've got the microphone, we've got the actors. You go to the location, the main actor doesn't turn up because he's on an unpaid film. So you come across these obstacles and you go, this isn't for me because it's difficult. What you're actually doing is you're building a catalogue of experience, and it goes the same for if you're a ballet dancer, graphic designer, whatever the thing is you're pursuing, or your multiple interests. The faster you fail, the more you learn, and you compound the wins. So
I love that. The faster you fail, the more you learn, and you compound the wins. Remember, compounding a win doesn't necessarily have to be winning altogether at once. It can be over a space of 10 years. It can be over a space of 20 years. But you are sure having little wins here and there that compounds to become a very big and gigantic win. And then you'll be able to call yourself something. I really like that point. Thank you very much for that point. So, and yes, one of the things that I also picked from what he said, the pros, is that you learn fast, you iterate fast. While I was in the university, I was... when I started my university days, I was a curious person, and I'm still very curious. My curiosity led me. In fact, one of the quotes that made me do that is they said, "Curiosity kills the cat." And I always tell myself, curiosity doesn't kill my own cat. In fact, my own cat learns from curiosity. So I learned everything I could learn from 3D art to videography to photography to graphics design to animation to virtual reality art. I learned a lot. In fact, to basketball, to skateboarding, I learned a lot. I have a skateboard just right there, just behind me here. So I learned a lot. I can play the drums. I love singing. Now I was trying to learn the keyboard one time. I tried learning the violin because I was curious. How are these things done? And that is how you can actually, discover your different sides. So those are the pros. So if I'm going to ask you again, Aindriü, what are the disadvantages? I think one disadvantage I can put out is that some people will think that you don't have a particular strength, right? They'll be like, okay, this person doesn't specialize, so I'm not going to hand over this project to this person. That's one disadvantage. I mean, for myopic people, Another is that it takes longer to be very good at different things at the same time. So, I would reel out those, disadvantages. I don't know if you have any other disadvantages of, diversification and not, reeling down.
Disadvantages, a big one is this analogy that we as creatives are a ship on an open sea. And if you don't have a port to go to, you'll be sailing around the world forever. And if you're constantly chasing your highest passion in the short term and you're steering away from your main goal, or if you don't have the overarching main goal, then again, you're going to be chasing your tail, ironically, like a drunken cat or something like this. He's had too much milk and he's getting a bit excited on the neighborhood. In circles. And I think lots of creatives feel this way. Another big disadvantage is following gurus and influencers who can steer you in the wrong directions, because all I mean by that is if you're listening to multiple voices. This doesn't have to just go for internet figures either. It can be family or friends. I have a rule with myself. I don't listen to people who aren't in the position I want to be. That sounds arrogant, but what happens is people project their insecurities onto you. If I had listened to other people in my hometown, I wouldn't have ever gone to film school. I wouldn't have ever freelanced with brands. I wouldn't be on this path that I'm on. Not once did I ever ask for approval. I always did it, and then I showed people either the finished product or the product that was almost finished, that I was, pretty much at the finish line anyway, so I could show them and it was done. So that's definitely another disadvantage of the too many voices and the lack of direction. If I'm going to flip this into a positive, which I like to do, is I kind of came up with this analogy, which I'm actually going to do a longer video on, and I call it "Be the president of your own project." And what that means is, I always imagine when an American president is running for office, and they have flags and badges, and they're on the TV and they're competing against the Donald Trump or whatever. They're all sort of fighting for office, and they're all pitching what they're going to do with America. And what you have to do as a creative / artist is you have to run for president for your own project. Why should people vote for you? Why should people invest their time, energy, and resources into you? And you have to be able to have a clear vision. You have to put your metaphorical suit on. You have to have your values in place, and you have to have an overarching vision. How is this contributing value to the world? And I see this problem with musicians. Typically, musicians, I've noticed, are a big thing, where they indulge in their own art to the point of it's not relatable anymore. So if you're an up and coming musician, you can really get lost in that sort of sonic landscape, and you're no longer communicating how it's beneficial to the world. I think potentially like designers, filmmakers, maybe more of the visual creators, that's usually a bit more large scope collaboration across multiple departments, and there's something about visuals that you sort of provide that value in a shorter time frame. So it's really important to know your position in your space and know what you're giving back to the world, so you don't sort of turn into a black hole and pull everything in and believe everything's just the world owes you something. You owe the world something. You were given this talent and you need to give it back to the world.
Man. Aindriü, you said a lot of things and I don't even know where to start from, but I think I'm going to start from the end. You have a lot to give to the world. In fact, you mentioned something about the black hole, just receiving and receiving and receiving and receiving. And the truth is that's one very dangerous thing about, this creative space. People just go online and, you just check the noise everywhere. This guy's design, this guy's podcast, this one's this. Of course, we're even making a podcast now. Somebody who wants to listen to this and all that. And the truth is, if you're not careful, you're going to have overload of information to the point that you may be amputated or too heavy to move. I call it information obesity. Some people call it information overload. So when you are obese and you have a lot of information, you wouldn't even know where to start from. And that's, I think, one very big disadvantage of, trying to diversify, as it were. But in diversification, I'll put it this way, that because I'm writing a book, right? And it has 7 chapters. And all these 7 chapters, speak to diversification, branding oneself, things that happen at the back end beyond the brief, things that happen during contracting, when you're contracting, things that happen, when, especially what you mentioned, designing for value, designing for integrity, right? And the truth is, as creatives, if we are not careful, we may get lost if one thing is not sure. And that one thing is finding your core, finding your anchor. You mentioned something about the big ship on the ship or the boat or the canoe, whatever it is, the body on a large body of water. And the truth is, we are creatives like that. And we are on this large body of the creative world. If you are not careful, you don't have an anchor. You are listening to everybody. You can listen to, watching every tutorial you can watch, getting all the information you can get, sucking in everything like the black hole. And you also don't have a core, like you don't know what it is that you are built for. You will get lost.
So going off this idea of being sort of a ship with no direction, I think a good starting point is to act on your highest passion in the moment. This gets the ball rolling and it gets you in the mindset of pursuing something bigger than yourself. And that's just a starting point. And if you're thinking, well, this brings me back in a full circle because I want to diversify and I have lots of interests, I usually find that in a moment when there's 2 or 3 interests happening at the same time, there's usually one that's the sort of central pillar, like the greatest interest in that moment. It could be graphic design. You're interested in drawing as well, or filmmaking. But let's say graphic design is your central pillar. Pursue the central pillar in the moment. As you're on the pursuit of that interest, those accompanying interests, you can then bring into that central interest. Usually in the creative field / industries, there's a lot of overlap. There will be ways to bring in those other passions, and that can only strengthen your central pillar. For example, writing for me, that goes hand in hand with filmmaking, because I could then plan the story, write really good dialogue with the characters, and then by the time it came to filming, sound, actors, everything else, I had all that base knowledge of writing to be able to communicate my ideas properly and to be able to edit things well. So on the pursuit of the central pillar. Then kind of comes phase 2. And phase 2 is where it gets real. And this is coming back to sort of the valley of disappointment, because you've sort of acted on the excitement, you're coming across the challenges, you might be doing several things at the same time. But by doing it over and over again, it's a bit like exercising a muscle at the gym. You're putting in your reps, your body's getting stronger, your mind's getting stronger. You start to get angry. You might be thinking anger's not good. Passion, the formula of passion is love and anger. You start to get angry because you go, I'm arriving to the film set late every time. I'm arriving at the clients late every time. Every time I go to design a logo, my computer's frying. It's over. My computer can't handle Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. That anger is a good steerer into a new direction. So you go, I've got to wake up earlier. I've got to get up instead of rolling out of bed at 1 PM. I'm going to get up at 8 AM. I'm going to get up at 6 AM so I can get the sunrise. I can film a batch of content and I can get on with my day. I'm going to work a part-time job so I can save up for a new laptop so I can run Photoshop to design my logos. You start to find the cracks in your workflow. And the more you go over it with a brush, the better you can build your thing, and you'll find your formula. And it's a bit like a military routine. And this takes a long time to get right. You don't expect to find your passion and then wake up the next day and you're doing push-ups and everything's perfect. Mine took years. In university, I was rolling out of bed like God knows what time. It took many years for me to get into military mode. But there's that other quote, creatives are the new athletes, and it's so true. You have to be a machine, but I think what people do is they skip the middle part. They get the excitement, they look at people all the way on their chapter 30, and they're missing the other 29 chapters. And then creatives get frustrated when after a few days, weeks, a few months, they're not at their chapter 30. But this middle part is years. It's years of discipline.
Yeah, years of. You mentioned things about getting up early, getting the work done. It is super important that we get up early as creatives and don't lay around, all lazy. In fact, for someone like me, I work at night. I'm the night owl. I start working around 9 PM, sometimes up till 6:30 AM, sometimes 5, sometimes 4 AM. And then I go to bed and then wake up by 11 AM or probably 12 PM. And I've started my day till the next morning, 5 AM. This is the truth. You need to have a consistent routine that can feed your creative juice. You can't play all day and sleep all night and expect to be as good as someone that is putting in the work. So put in the work and, go for that medal, because someone that needs to diversify and be better cannot really sleep on his hands or sit on his hands and be better for it. So thank you very much, Astrella, for this. Before we call it a wrap, before we go, because this is just past 28 minutes already, what extra thing or recommendations do you have for people that are listening to this podcast after now?
I think I'll just sort of summarize a bit more about this sort of multidisciplinary practice. So when you're on your journey, and you start to win time and you start to work a bit smarter as well as hard. There's this concept flying around the internet at the moment that you don't work hard, you just work smart. I don't like just that. This isn't true. You do both. You work super hard, and by working super hard, you find ways to work smarter. You won't find the ways to work smarter without working hard. So they're like brother and sister. They go together. They come as a pack. You can read books and listen to podcasts and things like this one to help you along the way. But working hard is the bread and butter, and it's just a fact. So work hard and you'll find ways to work smarter. When you start to win time, that's when you can start to practice multiple disciplines at the same time, because you'll have your central pillar that you're pursuing. And then when you start to win time around your central pillar, your central pursuit, you can bring in these other practices. So let's just go back to the graphic design example. You start designing logos for local businesses. You're beginning, you're getting like $50 for a logo. You're working 6 hours, for each logo. Then you start to get a bit quicker. You raise your prices to $100, $200. People start DMing you on Instagram going, oh, can you design my logo, etc. And then you don't have to design as many logos to make the same amount of money. Once you've start to get a bit of that reputation, you'll find that maybe 2 evenings a week now you have time for drawing as well as your logo design. So you'll be designing logos, and then you can draw some characters too. And then maybe one of those days in the week you decide to start making videos with your friends. So now you're designing logos for money, you're doing your passion drawings on the side, and now you're filming videos too. Those 3 things already start to go together really well, because you can maybe make logo tutorials, you can put your characters in the videos too, and then maybe your friends can help film it. So now you've got a production, you have a vision, because you're going beyond just designing logos for people. And now what you're doing is you're creating a value, like a bigger purpose. And maybe these videos that you're making about your logos, maybe that becomes a serialized content series. Maybe you start rocking up to local businesses with your friends, and then your friends are in the video too, and now you've got a collective. So it's you can't necessarily sit down and decide how you're going to do multiple things at the same time. I think through practice, through patience, and through the discipline we talked about before, you start to see more and more opportunity. The singer Ed Sheeran has a really nice quote. He's doing an interview at a music venue, and he has his fans asking him questions, or like amateur musicians asking him questions, and they go, how do you write so many hit songs? Ed Sheeran says, I don't write hit songs. He says he writes 1,000 songs and 3 of them are the hit songs. In order to get to the 3 hit songs, you have to turn on the tap, let all the horrible water gush out, then you get to the clear water. Let it get out, and then you get to the fountain of youth. So don't be discouraged if you're getting the gunky water. Don't be discouraged if you're on your chapter 1, someone else is on their chapter 30. Don't get discouraged if you begin filmmaking and then you find out that you want to be a ballet dancer. Don't get discouraged when you have friends and family telling you what's what when they haven't become filmmakers themselves or ballet dancers themselves. That combination with your higher calling, you can achieve anything, and you will provide your value to the world, because you'll be having your connection with God, the universe, your friends, whatever your higher feeling comes from. You will then feel like a well of joy, truth, and light, and you will become something bigger than you ever imagined.
Oh, wow. Like, I am so blown away, and I'm glad that I followed my spirit to invite you over to this podcast, because you keep hitting the nail on the head over and over and over and over again. I really do appreciate you. And the recommendation is this, guys, you can do it. That's it. Don't give up. Just keep diversifying. Just keep, reaching out for your core. Keep reaching out for the goal. Keep making sure that you keep producing and keep doing. And he mentioned one thing. Mentioned the fact that you should try as much as possible to get hold of the entire value chain. This thing is one thing I love to tell my community members, that as a creative, you understand your core, you know what you want to be, you know what you are and what you're diversifying into. Learn how to grasp the entire value chain. And what's the value chain? The value chain from your 3D to 2D to graphics design to poster design. If you're a graphic designer, like videography, everything, like understand the entire value chain and the entire system. It will help you have more value and to help you reach diversification faster. Remember, we are creatives and we are so talented. Everybody is a designer. In fact, I say everybody is a creative, but it's the ones that are brave enough to explore that really, really become creative. Thank you very much, Astrella, for joining us on this beautiful episode. It's been a delight having you. It's been a delight having you talk to the Elite Circle community. We'd like to have you more and more every time. And guys, stay tuned. Share this podcast with someone you think needs to hear this. And we'll see you on the next episode. So have a blast, guys. Bye for now.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode. Be sure to rate, review, leave a like, and follow the channel. Also, feel free to visit whitespacecreativerse.com to join the community and access resources that will help you reach your career and business goals faster. That's www.whitespacecreativerse.com. Until next time, stay creative.